This lesson is on the midpoint and distance formulas. Let's start off by going over the midpoint formula. So if I had a graph, x and y, I want to take any 2 points and find the midpoint, exactly halfway in between both of them. So how can I do this? I'll draw the 2 points here so that I can be more clear. So let's call this first one point 1 and the second one point 2. And we want to find a point in the middle, M. So point 1 has some x value, let's say x1, and point 2 has some x value, x sub 2. They also both have y values. Here we have y sub 1, and here we have y sub 2. So in order to get to this midpoint, I need to be exactly halfway in between these. I can really simply doing this by using the average. The average of two numbers is the number exactly between them. And the average for the x's is just the sum of them divided by 2. The same goes for the y's, the sum of them divided by 2. And this gives us our midpoint formula. The midpoint is the average of the x's and the average of the y's. Now let's talk about the distance formula. The distance is where I can have a graph, and I can have 2 points, and I want to be able to tell you exactly what this distance is between them. Well, to do this, first I want to discuss a little bit about triangles. These are my x and y axes, by the way. So, if I have a right triangle, where let's call this distance a and this distance b, the Pythagorean Theorem says that on here, if I call this distance c, this is just the square root of a squared and b squared. Or rather, it can be thought of as the Pythagorean Theorem says that there's this special relationship that a squared plus b squared is equal to c squared. And that's only when there's that right angle there. And of course, then I can go ahead and solve this for c, just to be the square root of a squared plus b squared. Back to the graph. So let's call these points 1 and 2. And of course, they also have corresponding x's, x1 and x2. What this means is that the distance here is just the difference, x2 minus x1. Similarly, these numbers both have y's. Here we have y2, and here we have y1. So this distance, which is out here, is y2 minus y1. So this is a right angle. We know that. We know that's a right angle because we define x and y to always be perpendicular to each other. That's how we draw our graphs. And now, using the Pythagorean Theorem, we can find out what d, the distance between the 2 points, is. D squared is going to be equal to, well, we have one of the legs, x2 minus x1 squared, and we have the other leg, which is y2 minus y1 squared. So this tells us what our distance squared is. But of course, we don't want to know the distance squared. We want to know the distance. So we just take the square root. And there we have it, the distance formula. That's it for this video. If you'd like to see an application of these formulas, look at the examples.